So this is what it would look like if you entered the Google Forms address, or if you click on the link that I provided. You would come to the landing page of Google Forms. There's also, depending on your language that you have set in your browser, you will also get the English version of this. So this is the German version because I have a German browser. So when you are logged in to Google, you can click on Open Google Forms. For this, you need to be logged in. Otherwise, Google will ask you to sign in. And I have here a lot of forms. These are all templates. And I will click on Start a New Form from blank, which is basically an empty form. So this is how an empty form looks when you create one. And you can do different things here now. So starting from creating a better design, so changing colors and basic fonts, to adding the relevant question and information that the recipients need to know. And I think the GUI here, the graphical user interface, is very clean. So on top here, you find this little color palette, and this, if you click on it, it says Customize Theme. This is where you can do very basic theming. It's not that you can change everything, but you can change some basic things. For example, you could choose an image for the header. You just upload a file, or you use a file that you already have in your Google Drive. Then you can change the theme color. So if I click on blue or this one, it will change, and you can also add your own color if you have the hexadecimal value of the color. So for example, 003 EE9, I think. That's wrong. Which one is the university's blue? EE3. I don't know anymore. It doesn't matter. So, but you can basically type in any hexadecimal code that represents a color. But you can also use this slider to choose a color that you like, of course. So once you have your color, you can say, okay, should it be the darker version or the lighter version in the background, and you can change a font style. So if you want a more playful thing, maybe you are doing something for your kindergarten, that would be appropriate. But if you're in a business context, maybe it's more formal or more basic style. So we don't want to focus on theming, but this is basically everything that you can do in the context of theming, and then you can close it and basically keep working on your form. So you see up here that you can also preview your form. We will do that once we have some questions typed in, and when you hit preview, you see the version that your recipients are going to see. So you can basically see how it would look like when you shared the link at this stage. And then you have some settings that you can set. I just want to go through them really quickly. We do not have to change a lot here. So you could, for example, collect email addresses, which would automatically add a field to collect email addresses, and you would then make this mandatory, and you could then use that email address to send, for example, confirmation and stuff like that to those. It's also be careful, because since we have the new law regarding data privacy, DSGVO in German, we cannot collect email addresses without telling the people what we do with it. So if you use this, you might be leaving the legal area and going into a gray zone, and so be careful with that. We don't need to collect email addresses at this point, but you can. So you can also, if you require someone to sign in with a Google account, you can say you can only respond once. That's only if you are signed in with your Google account, and if you have a form that requires a limit of one response, then you need to sign in order to fill out this form. So it's not a good idea if you have a broad audience for a survey or something like that. So people likely won't log in. Okay, then you can say what can respondents do after they submitted the form, edit the form again, or see a summary of all the responses. That is a good idea if you want to share the results with the people. So for example, you have a team and everyone should see what the others said, then you can say, okay, let people see a summary. If that's not the case, just leave it unchecked. And in presentation, you can change some things such as what should be shown when someone submitted their message, so the confirmation. For example, you could say, thanks for registering this beer sale in context of the case study. That would be what you see when you submit a form. In this case, we could say, thanks for your profile information, or whatever. Let's say for sharing your profile information, because we are collecting profile information of students. You could say, okay, show the link to submit another response. Shuffle question order means basically if you have a test, basically you could shuffle the questions so it's not always the same order for every recipient, or you could also show a progress bar if you have longer surveys. And then quizzes, we don't need that now, but you could make a quiz, and you could assign points that you get. So you could say this is the right answer, and you get 1 point for that, and at the end you get immediately the result, how many points you achieved in this quiz. So you could use that for quizzes as well. Okay, this is basically all we can do in the settings. It's limited, but it's enough for many use cases. And so we simply leave it at that and click Save. And now let's see what we can do in the actual form. So now we have, as you can see, 2 tabs here. So one is labeled questions and the other is labeled responses. If you have the German version of Google Drive, you will see Fragen and Antworten, but you can switch it to the English version, and I will post a short description, yeah, I think below this video, so you can see how you can switch to English. It would be a good idea if we all use the same language setting, because then we don't have to compare the name of menu items and stuff like that. It makes it a little bit easier, and since we're working in an English module here, it might make sense to switch to English. And you can actually do that just for the Google products that we're using here. Okay, so under questions, I think it's clear you can add questions. There's a plus button, and we will use that in a second. And under responses, you see that we don't have any responses yet. That's natural. We didn't share our link, and nobody had the chance to respond. But you could say, okay, for the responses, please create a spreadsheet. And that would, if I click that button, that would create a Google spreadsheet in my Google Drive account. And any responses collected from this form will be automatically stored in this spreadsheet. This is very useful because with that spreadsheet we can continue working and doing something with the data. If we don't click that, it will stay in Google Forms and we will only get the summary of each question. So we could also download the responses as a CSV file, which is comma separated values. You can again then open that in Excel, but why do the extra work when we can have it in a spreadsheet already? And this basically would mean that currently I'm not accepting any responses. If I had a live survey now and I wanted to stop, nobody should respond anymore. I'd simply check this and people will get the message that I type in here. We are currently not taking any more whatever profile responses. Okay, this is responses. We will look into that once we actually have a response, but now let's think about questions and of course the title. So I would call that student profile form. Doesn't have to be very sophisticated, and the description we can leave that blank. That would be shown under the title as it's indicated here, as an extra description what this form is for. So, but we can leave it blank. Let's click into the title of Untitled Question, and once we do that, we see that a whole different option set is opened, and it looks a little bit different. So what can we do here? We can replace the placeholder text with a real question. So what would be something that you would ask someone to fill out when you collect student profile information? So what would be an information that you would want to collect? Yes.
Name. What's the first name?
So let's start with the first name. Okay. Then we could say enter your first name. That would be the question or the title. We could also just type in first name, but it's up to us what we type in here. And then now currently or per default, the type of question is a multiple choice question, and that's not suitable for this use case. So we use the drop down here to see what choices we have other than multiple choice. And here you see all the options. What we want is probably short answer. That's a one-line text field. That's basically what we would expect. We could also add a multiple lines using this paragraph. So that would be like a feedback text or something where we expect people to write more than just one word or one line of text. Multiple choice, I think, is pretty clear. Then checkboxes is multiple choice, but allowing actually multiple choice. So multiple answers. Multiple choice is if you uncheck one option or check one option, you uncheck all the others. The checkboxes mean you can basically check all the options or none, depending on what you prefer from that list. Dropdown is similar to multiple choice or checkboxes. It comes in both flavors. Multiple choice or checkboxes is simply just as a dropdown. It saves space. So multiple choice, you will see all the options in the form. Dropdown will be collapsed. Once you click on it, you see the options. You can also upload files that will be stored, and yeah, you can open them later on. Linear scale is basically, you know that from surveys, on a scale from 1 to 5, what is your preference regarding X, Y? And then you can have multiple choice grids, which is basically linear scales, but with more than one question. So rate the following properties by importance. So what do you find important? And then you can have 10 properties and the same linear scale, and then people can check which one do they like on that scale and how much. Tick box grid is basically, I think, the same, but again, the difference is multiple choice and checkboxes, while in multiple choice grid you can only select one. So either 1, 2, 3, or 5, and 4, of course. And in tick box grid, you can check more. So it's the same. The difference is multiple choice, checkboxes, and here it's multiple choice grid, tick box grid. Date, I think, is self-explanatory. You can have a date picker, which also allows you to include time. So if you click on include time, you could also store the time when something was. Yeah, somebody could type in or select a time. And then only time is I think also self-explanatory. It allows you to type in a time, hour and minute. Okay, so we said for this we want a short answer, and we could say in addition that this is a required information, and what happens then, basically it will be shown as required by putting a red star in front of it. So let's have a look at how this looks. So once we click on preview, we get the preview, and here it says, okay, the little asterisk it means required, and you see enter your first name is required, and we could enter our first name, submit the form, and then we see thanks for sharing your profile information. That is what we typed in when we defined what should appear after submission. And then we can click submit another response. So I will now move back to our editing mode, and now you see under responses that there's a 1, and we see, okay, enter your first name. We have one response. Somebody entered Nicholas, which was of course me. And then you can also, this is the summary, so you would, for text fields, you would see, of course, all the values, but for example, if you have a linear scale from 1 to 5, you would see the distribution of the responses and the average and stuff like that. And if you want to see the individual answers, you click on individual, and then you see actually the forms as they were filled out. So that's the individual view. And what you can now do is click on the spreadsheet, create a spreadsheet, and say, okay, create a new spreadsheet. Since our form is untitled, the name of the spreadsheet will be untitled form. If we gave this form a name first, which we will do, and I call this, okay, student profile form, it will automatically take the name that we put in here. So now it has a name, and then the spreadsheet will be called student profile form responses. And we could also use an existing spreadsheet, but I want to create a new one. And then now I hit create. And it should automatically open that spreadsheet, which was just created. And you see that it has two columns. One is a timestamp, and it is the timestamp of the time the form was submitted. So when did I press submit? And the second one is the value of the only question that we have. Enter your first name, that's the column name, and then each row will be one response. Okay, let's add 2 or 3 more questions to see what other types of questions we could use and how they work. So do you have another idea? Yes?
What gender are you?
That's good, because then we can use some different type of questions. So type, what is your gender?
Maybe multiple choice and then male or female.
And do you see what happened? Suggestions, we got suggestions. So Google seems to know what we are going for. And it gives us suggestions to add female, male, prefer not to say, or other. And we can simply say add all, and then we already get the multiple choice list. But of course, we can define our own list. So what would you have put in here?
Yeah, female and male.
Okay. So we need to have an option for other, because we have more than 2 genders. That's why we leave other, and other is indicated as, I think if you preview that, you will see that. If you click on other, that's basically the option where you can type in your own value. Okay, so here you can define, if you're not female or male, you can define how you would call that, your own gender. So that's basically the other option that you often find in such surveys. So okay, that's that was easy. Let's add another one. What else? Yeah.
What's your birthday? Your age?
Let's go for birthday, because then we can use the date picker. That's better. What's your birthday? And it automatically chooses date. So Google Forms has gotten a lot smarter than the last time I used it. So that was not the case, but it already guessed, okay, birthday is probably date. Okay. So let's see how that looks. So first of all, let's type in some other information, and then you see that we get a date picker. When we click on it, you get this little calendar. And I think you can also type it in. Sometimes it's easier to type it in. So that will be my birth date. And I submit it. And now is a good time to look in our sheet, and you see that is the new record that we have just created, so 1808. And the new fields were added, and the old records which didn't include this field are just left blank. So that's important to know. When you add a new field and someone else adds a record, then the other records, of course, will stay blank. Okay, so what's your birthday? Does anyone have another information that you would like to know? We can add maybe a question and see what other options we have again. So we could ask somebody what they like or dislike, or maybe what's interesting is do you have any background in the following technologies? Something like that. We could use a multiple choice grid for that. Let's try that. That's maybe a good one. So what is your skill regarding the following, let's say, tools? And then this is the rows, and these are the columns. And then you could say the very left column is maybe no experience, and we could say, or maybe we only use 3. That makes it a little easier. A little, and then this would be professional. Okay, and then we could say maybe Slack, I don't know. Google Spreadsheets. And one more maybe, let's add Tableau. And then if we preview that, you see that it's this kind of grid, and because we said it's a multiple choice grid, once we click one option, it will unselect the other options. So Slack, little, professional, and maybe no experience in Tableau. So when we submit this, I'll first type in the other information as well. It doesn't matter. That's not my birth date, but I want to go back to the sheet where it's stored. So you see how this multiple choice or this multiple choice grid is stored. So you see that we have actually 1, 2, 3. And if you expand that, you see that these are 3 columns just for this one question, and we get for each of those answer options we get 1 column, and we get the corresponding skill level in each of those columns. So this is how you would get the results for this multiple choice question. Okay, I think you get the basic idea of how to set up forms with Google Forms. Some things that we haven't talked about is the other things that we can add. So we can import questions from other forms that we have previously created. So sometimes maybe you want to reuse your questions because you put in a lot of thought, and then you simply click on import questions, and then you can open the form, select the question you want to import, and then you have it in your sheet or in your form here. You can also add title and description blocks, images in the form. You can add a video. So, for example, you could add a promotion video and then ask people about it, or you could add sections. And sections, if you have a very long questionnaire or survey, sections allow you to structure it. You can give a section a heading, and you can also make sure that each section is a separate page. So you click on continue, and then a new page opens, which is the next section. So if you have a lot of information that you're gathering, then sections are a good idea. Okay, so that's basically what we wanted to show for Google Forms. And I think with that, and maybe trying it out a little bit for yourself, you can already solve one part of the case study where you're supposed to build this sales cache register form to improve upon the current spreadsheet.